All right, members, we are going to move to the business before us today. We will be taking up Senate Bill 97. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 97 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to the state budget, making an appropriation, therefore, to take effect immediately. Budget bill.
Members, if I have your attention, Dr. Weber, you may open.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, Monday we passed our budget bill AB 93. Today we have before us SB 97, which is an amendment to AB 93. It makes 100 amendments to the bill. It adjusts the bill to reflect the overall budget negotiations that have occurred over the last few days. This budget bill is approximately $115.4 billion in the general fund spending, which gives us a total reserve of $4.6 billion. I respectfully ask for your aye vote for SB 97.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Ms. Melendez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a Budget Conference Committee member, I want to thank the governor for standing with Republicans and rejecting the majority party's spending wish list. The governor listened to our concerns, and he did insist on a budget that was based on sound revenue numbers. And this budget is an improvement over the Democrat budget that was passed on Monday. That is true. It reduces spending by $2 billion, which aligns us with more realistic projections. Unfortunately, this new budget package shifts over $100 million away from K through 12 and higher education to fund other programs. It passes up an opportunity to make the changes necessary to give every child in California the opportunity to learn and have a great teacher. Instead, it funds things like a fish crossing. I have no idea what that is, but it funds it. And it also removes funding for new judgeships across the state, which we cannot afford to do. By removing this funding, it's only going to further limit the public's access to the courts and continue to create backlogs of months, probably even years, for justice. This budget does nothing to address the funding for California's degrading transportation infrastructure. Shortly, we will convene a special session to discuss transportation infrastructure, and I guess, that there's going to be some discussion about some sort of new tax or fee in order to facilitate that funding. So while we had discussion yesterday about this being the largest budget in our state's history, I don't believe, nor do Republicans believe, that it adequately addresses the need to fund our roads and transportation. For these reasons and many more that I will not go into, I respectfully ask for your no vote.
All debate having ceased on this item, Dr. Weber, you may close.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, we appreciate, obviously, the comments of our colleagues and their active participation in the development of this budget. Just a reminder, in terms of being fiscally responsible, that this budget gives us a $4.6 billion total reserve, which includes $3.5 billion in Prop 2 rainy day fund and $1.1 billion in regular budget reserve. It also repays $1.8 billion in our wall of debt and other debt payments in accordance to Proposition 2. This bill also reinvests in our schools. It gives our schools an increase in Prop 98 funding by over $14 billion in a mix of one-time and ongoing funds for the 2014-15 budget. It expands early education by an ongoing amount of $265 million, giving us approximately 13,000, almost 14,000 new child care and full-day preschool slots. It also invests in our universities, our UCs, our CSUs, our community colleges. It also increases financial assistance for many of our students. This bill also responds to a number of issues with regards to our environment. Even though our colleagues don't understand fish crossings, we've had hearings on it and discussions of it in the budget meetings. And I recommend that they also look at that to see exactly what it is and the impact it has on our environment. So with all that being said, sir, I requestfully ask for an aye vote for SB 97.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 All members vote who desire to vote.
We're looking for solid, right?
All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 53, noes 26. The measure passes. Members, we are going to be moving to Senate Bill 83, SB 83. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 83 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to public resources, making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Dr. Weber, you may again open.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, SB 83 establishes an independent review panel to make recommendations regarding improvement to the permitting, enforcement, public outreach, and fiscal management of the Department of Toxic Substances Control. It makes various changes to the drinking water fee schedule and authorizes State Board Water to adopt fees for emergency regulation. It allows well completion reports filed with the Department of Water Resources to be made available to governmental agencies and the public upon request. It also establishes a border region solid waste working group to develop and coordinate long-term solutions to address and remediate problems associated with waste, tires, and solid waste along the border in the Tijuana River estuary. It also provides for metrics, timelines, and accountability for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Administration and for the underground injection program as administered by the Department of Conservation. I respectfully ask for your aye vote for SB 83.
Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mr.
Daly,
Speaker and members. I have to stand in opposition to this bill for the reason that they're taking funds from the environmental license plates, which normally goes to conservancies like the Tahoe Conservancy, and diverting that money to the park. So I ask for your no vote on this piece of legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. All debate having ceased on this item, Dr. Weber, you may close.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I respectfully ask for your aye vote for SB 83.
With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote.
Waiting for Gray to get to his desk, right?
All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 52, noes 27. The measure passes. We are moving to Senate Bill 79. Senate Bill 79. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 79 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to human services, making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Dr. Weber.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, this is the Human Services Omnibus Trailer Bill. It contains all of the statutory changes needed to accompany our 2015-16 Human Services budget decisions, including the following. It creates a program to provide immigration assistance to persons with $15 million for the Department of Social Services. The services will include naturalization, DAPA and DACA outreach, education, and application services. It also phases in more frequent inspections conducted by the Community Care Licensing Division of DSS. It contains oversight language asking DSS to report on implementation and what it would take to get annual inspections for all facilities. It also includes language to aid in the administration of CalWorks Housing Support Program, which this budget augments by an additional $15 million to a total of $35 million to help poor families meet basic housing needs. The bill includes a host of technical changes in the 1991 realignment statute that will ease functionings for the controller and counties without changing any of the dollar amounts of the distribution of realignment funds. It makes other needed changes to the code to realign the drug felon eligibility rule we lifted as part of last year's budget and to avoid burdensome reporting for certain CalFresh cases with no or little income. I respectfully ask for your aye vote for SB 79.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 66, noes 9. Measure passes. Members, we are moving to Senate Bill 88, SB 88. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 88 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to water, making an appropriation, therefore, to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Dr. Weber, you may open.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, SB 88 allows local water agencies to issue penalties for violation of local and state water conservation requirements, including penalties of up to $1,000 for the first violation, increasing with continuing violations, where the State Water Resources Board has shown intent and substantial nature of violation. This bill also requires that diversions in excess of 10 acre-feet of water per year, with some exceptions, must have a measuring device or method of measurement. It authorizes the State Water Resource Board to adopt emergency regulations to implement the measuring device requirement and increases the frequency of water diversion reporting to at least annually. Consideration given for cost feasibility. Those who have entered into voluntary agreements under 2015 irrigation season have 1 year exemption. This bill also authorizes the State Water Resource Board to require consolidation of water systems with a focus on disadvantaged unincorporated communities and disadvantaged communities served by mutual water companies that have consistently failed to provide drinking water. It exempts the development of new building codes related to dual plumbing from certain California Environmental Quality Act's provisions for one developmental cycle. It also provides CEQA exemption for local ordinances related to well permitting to assist local governments with their groundwater management efforts. Lastly, it provides a very narrowly tailored CEQA exemption by a public agency to mitigate drought conditions during a drought state of emergency proclaimed by the governor for recycled water pipeline and related groundwater replenishment infrastructure that is within existing rights of way, and that do not impact waterlands or sensitive habitat, and where the construction impacts are fully mitigated for projects needed to the drought. This authority sunsets on January 1, 2017. I respectfully ask for an aye vote for SB 88.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Ms. Olson, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I urge a very strong no vote on this horrible bill, SB 88. A drought bill, a budget trailer bill dealing with the drought, should actually effectively address California's extreme water crisis related to drought. This bill doesn't do that at all. When are we going to work together to actually increase water supply and get it to the communities who so desperately need it? Our economy depends on increasing water supply. Our families' livelihoods depend on increasing water supply. We have communities in our state that don't even have drinking water. But instead, we're passing a trailer bill, calling it drought, and it, first of all, completely circumvents the LAFCO process. It has Prop 218 violations in it. It imposes $10,000 fines for water violations with little to no due process. And the CEQA exemption it provides is for a CEQA exemption to place moratoriums on wells. What kind of CEQA exemption is that? The kind of exemptions or streamlining we should do of CEQA should be to increase water supply and provide it to the industries, the communities, and the families who so desperately need it. This bill doesn't do any of that. And the worst part of it is it was in print for less than 36 hours. So we've been scrambling to get information because we believe the budget process should be one where Republicans and Democrats can work together to graft good policy that Californians are depending on. And there is no policy this year that is more important to the state of California in every city, in every county, in every unincorporated area across the whole state than water. So let's get it right. Let's vote no on SB 888. No on SB 88. Let's come back to the drawing board and let's pass a budget trailer bill related to the drought and related to water in a way that actually helps Californians instead of posing more economic and livelihood hardship on California families and economy.
Mr. Lejo, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, members. So far, every budget bill that we voted on here today has been bipartisan. So we are showing hardworking Californians that we can do this these budget votes in a bipartisan manner. But I'm here speaking on this bill because East Porterville is a small community in Tulare County that is a poster child for the emergency drought response. More than 70% of this community is without water. Their taps don't have running water because their wells have gone dry. And when residents are currently leaning on the goodwill of their neighbors and other local nonprofits who truck in water for bathing and for drinking. But it's not enough. People still don't have water, and that's unacceptable in modern America and modern California. And they're not alone. There are many communities facing the same challenges as East Porterville. We find in community after community, without safe drinking water, there's a lack of affordable infrastructure and competent management. Small, rural, disadvantaged communities and communities of color are disproportionately impacted by drinking water contamination. Residents in these communities often have wells that are shallower and more quickly and severely contaminate, or in cases like East Porterville, have shallow wells that have gone dry. A recent study found that community water systems serving larger percentages of Latinos and renters receive drinking water with higher toxic nitrate levels. Consolidating water system is the best hope for millions of Californians without safe drinking water. We have provided protections for all parties in a consolidation, infrastructure financing and liability protection. We have created an open and accountable process with a range of appeals. The legislature unanimously approved these same liability protections last year for communities in Riverside County and the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Consolidating failing water systems don't create more water, but it will help those communities who lack both water and financial wherewithal to finance new infrastructure projects that bring them new water or cleaner water source. Members, imagine how you would live day after day if every time you turned on your tap, not a single drop came out. This is why we should all support this important bill today for the sake of California's hardworking families.
Mr. Wagner, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I won't call this the worst bill of the year. I've already done that. But this one is pretty bad. Briefly, let me just talk for a second about the legal problems, because I know some of my colleagues will talk and have already talked about some of the other policy problems. But first of all, with respect to the penalties, now we had a case out of Orange County not too terribly long ago which substantially undermined the tier rate structure and raised and resolved some very significant legal questions. With respect to the penalty provision of this bill, that looks like a backdoor way into a tiered structure. It is likely going to be found to not be permissible, and therefore at least that chunk of this bill is likely to be thrown out. The penalties are onerous, the penalties are unnecessary, and the penalties are merely a way to disguise doing what the courts have said you can't do. And it's been mentioned that there is a Prop 218 problem. Briefly, there is, and the problem is simply this. If we're talking about consolidation because there's one district that is unable, for example, to support the infrastructure changes that need to be made, you've got a consolidating agency and its ratepayers that are going to be asked to pay for those upgrades for folks not right now in their district, for upgrades that don't benefit them. That's a problem. But there isn't an easy solution, because the solution, making the folks who are going to benefit from those upgrades pay for them, can't be done, because that's the whole reason you need consolidation. So you can't have it both ways. That raises a Prop 218 problem that certainly the majority party in this trailer bill or in their arguments have not given us any way of getting around, any way of getting out of. That's another piece of this bill that's going to go down. There are lots of policy problems with it. There are legal problems with it. My great friend from Modesto said what ought to happen. Vote no, let's come back, let's do this right, let's solve the legal problems, let's solve the policy problems, and let's do this in the right way. This isn't the right way. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Levine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of this legislation. This bill deals with a drastic situation. In California, we have small, economically disadvantaged communities living every day without safe, reliable, and adequate drinking water. Many are small, unincorporated communities whose shallow wells are the first to go dry in a drought like this one. Surprisingly, some of these communities are right next door to communities who have safe drinking water and who could help provide water to those in need. Nonetheless, some of these communities refuse to provide services to neighboring communities under any circumstances, even if their neighbor has no water at all, even if their neighbor has to bring in water by truck, even if the funding and technical assistance can be provided, even if they are fully protected from liability, even if they are assured that there will be no impacts to their existing ratepayers. They simply refuse to help out their neighbor in need unless they are forced to do so. And that is exactly what this bill does. It forces them to do the right thing. This bill says, help your neighbor in need, or we will do it for you. I appreciate that there are some communities who are already stepping up and delivering water to their neighbors. We've recognized this problem and refused to abandon their neighboring communities. This bill appreciates these efforts and does not apply in those situations. This bill simply empowers the State Water Board to help facilitate local solutions. If locals refuse to develop and implement these solutions, this bill allows the State Water Board to compel a consolidation or extension of service as a last resort. This bill creates the means for the state to step in and help out where locals have turned a blind eye. And no level of misinformation on this floor will get you on Fox News or will get you the respect of voters in California when it's you stopping children in California getting a clean bath or safe drinking water. I urge your support.
Mr. Jones, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I have a suggestion. Rather than calling this bill SB 88, the title of the bill should be "Don't Waste a Good Crisis." In lines with Saul Alinsky's tactics for taking over government, this is probably one of the most egregious bills in my 4.5 years in the state capitol. We are the state legislature. We are elected by our constituents to come here and represent them. We are not elected to come to Sacramento and give more power to the executive branch and some bureaucrat in a 4-story, 5-story, 30-story building to take over our local agencies. This is horrible. That we're going to give the executive branch one more tool in Sacramento to then will be that power and that tool then be handed over to an unelected bureaucrat to come into our neighborhoods and come into our districts and take over these local water agencies. Now, there's probably some good things in this bill, but I can't get past that we're going to give the State Water Control Board this level of control in our state. Members, we are the elected representatives of our district. We are elected to come up here and stand strong for the voters and the taxpayers and the constituents in our district. I just want to read one letter that I received on this issue. And I'm sure every single one of us have received at least one letter from a water agency in our district very concerned about this bill. Permission to read, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. Forced consolidations are not immediate fixes to the current drought emergency. Giving the State Water Resources Control Board broad authority to mandate consolidations could lead to significant unintended consequences. Current law provides for more effective solutions. Current law provides for more effective solutions to remedy threats to health and safety during the actual drought. Voluntary mutual assistance efforts could be utilized for immediate drought assistance in impacted communities. CEO, Padre Dam Water Authority. And I'm sure most of you have received letters of similar concern. Ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, let's do our elected duty and protect our constituents and vote no on SB 88. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Mathis, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker and members, I appreciate the comments by my good friend from Salinas, and I thank him for all his efforts to help the people of East Porterville. If we want to introduce a bill that waives CEQA on recycled water projects, that would be a great bill. But members, this bill does more than that. This bill would all but force East Porterville to annex when they have regularly voted against it. This bill would give unlimited police powers to the State Water Resource Control Board, who has shown more interest in fish than in people. This bill would make it easier for cities and counties to take farmland out of production. This bill would make it harder for our farmers to rotate their crops. Members, we need CEQA reform, but we cannot do that by destroying agriculture and taking away people's votes when they've already made decisions on certain matters. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Ms. Waldron, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to SB 88. In fact, I have a packet of letters. None of them are supporting it. Forced consolidations are not going to fix the drought emergency that we are in. Current law provides for a much more effective solution to remedy any threats to health and safety during a drought than forced consolidations, which bypass the LAFCO process. I stand opposed. I represent a very rural and agricultural district. I'm opposed to the water diversion monitoring and reporting language because of the complexity of the issue and the diversity of our California agriculture. These items need to be discussed, debated, vetted in policy committee, and on behalf of our farmers, I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Ms. Waldron. Mr. Bloom, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, we've heard twice that this bill is horrible, that it's bad, that it's egregious, and the fact of the matter is the one thing that is all of those things is the drought. And that's why every 6 months we have been adding to the provisions. We've been doing more and more in the state to address what is a statewide emergency. We've heard complaints about how expansive these things are that we're being asked to do in SB 88, but the fact of the matter is they are very, very limited. Example, the consolidation that we've heard complaints about only can happen for a disadvantaged community that's eligible, and it has to be located in an unincorporated area or served by a mutual water company. In addition, they must have been chronically and repeatedly deprived of safe, adequate, and reliable drinking water. All of these conditions have to be met before that provision, before a consolidation can happen. This is very, very limited. The CEQA provisions. We've heard that we shouldn't have statewide action. We shouldn't have a state that is taking control over these issues. But this is very, very limited. We've heard this. Some of the folks from the same side of the aisle say we should do a bigger CEQA exemption. It should just be for something that those folks would like to see happen. This is very focused, and it sunsets in 2017. 2017. It's really not very far away when you consider that this drought is highly likely to go on. If you pay attention to the predictions about the mega drought and how long it might continue for a long, long time. Sunsets in 2017. The local enforcement authority, again, it's very, very focused. We heard $10,000 fines are going to be levied. It's a maximum of $10,000. And for individuals, the maximum is $1,000 unless it is in an egregious situation where there's intention that's proved and it's large quantities of water that is being diverted. Again, very, very focused, many conditions that have to be met. This is an important bill. We need to take it seriously. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Gallagher, you are recognized from your desk.
Mr. Speaker, members, I rise in opposition to SB 88. And contrary to my colleagues' assertions, this is not just a limited move in terms of our water politics and policies. This is a substantial change in water law policy done in a budget trailer bill. Instead of done in our committee system, instead of having debate and discussion in our water committee, which one of the previous speakers is chairman of, we could have convened these discussions and had a robust discussion about what we should do to improve our water policy in the future. But instead, we're doing this in a budget trailer bill that's been out in public view for less than 36 hours. That's not the right way to do policy, members. And I would encourage us, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's do something that's going to be right for all of California. And these measures are pretty draconian. As we've already talked about the consolidation of water districts. One issue that I want to draw attention to is this new requirement that was only previously applicable to drought, but now making it permanent to require monitoring, expensive monitoring on any diversions over 10 acre-feet. These 10 acre-feet diversions are very small diversions, and these impact small farmers. We're talking about stock ponds, where these people are going to have to put in very burdensome measuring requirements. And need I remind you, because I've said it many times on this floor, that agriculture has bared the burden of this drought probably more than anyone. We're not just talking about 25% cutbacks. We're talking about 50% cutbacks in certain areas. We're talking about 0% water allocations in certain parts of my district, where they have been doing their part to get through this drought, where they have been giving up water left in Shasta Dam that people are relying upon for their crops this year, but left up there for fish. What sacrifice has environmental water taken in this drought? Very little. But in our urban areas, in our agricultural areas, we've taken very substantial hits. We're not talking about that. And to add insult to injury, we talk about CEQA reform and streamlining CEQA. And I appreciate there are some CEQA streamlining that's going on in this bill, but one of the things that we're doing is we're streamlining CEQA to allow for ordinances that restrict the development of new groundwater resources that might help communities that are struggling in this drought. So we're actually going in the wrong direction. We're doing CEQA reform to help restrict development of new water resources in this state. And oh, by the way, we're not doing the one thing that would certainly help us. East Porterville and other communities are not struggling because of the fact that we didn't consolidate water districts. They're struggling because we have failed to have the will to do something to increase our water storage capacity in this state. Let's be the first ones let's do that right now. Let's do something substantive. We have a water bond. But if we're going to do CEQA reform, let's do it to help get these reservoirs off the ground. Sites Reservoir, Temperance Flat. These can provide 3.6 million acre feet of water to this state, much needed for all of our communities throughout the state, for our urban areas, for drinking water, for our agriculturalists, for the environment, all of those things. Let's have the will today. If we're going to talk about CEQA streamlining and CEQA reform, let's do it for the things that are really going to make a difference 20 years from now. Let's have the will to do that today. Can we do that? I urge your no vote on AB 88. Thank you.
All debate having ceased on the measure, Dr. Weber, you may close.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, I appreciate all the conversation that has obviously been generated around SB 88 and the drought. And it's interesting because when I came to this House, obviously 3 years ago, the number one issue, as always, was water and the drought. And we've talked and we've talked and we've talked. And it took us forever to pass a water bond. And we know how long the conversation continues. And it's amazing to me at a time when we're trying to respond to a crisis, once again, we want to go back to the drawing board for more conversation. And when we go back to the drawing board, we still have communities in this state, in the richest and most luxurious state in the nation, without the most fundamental thing, which is water. I've seen better water policies sometimes in third world countries than here because we spend a lot of time talking. And the diversity of our conversation is apparent in the conversation today. This is a modest bill. It is a necessary bill to move us forward, to continue the planning for what we need to do to address the drought and to provide water, the most fundamental element for all people here in California. SB 88, I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 52, noes 28. Measure passes.